But then I just brought up something nerdy that is happening right now, and I just started talking about that. And we were both super into it. We were both like trying to predict the end. And then I was able to insert like a biblical truth and turn that around. And then we were talking about that. And I'm like, that is what I do.
Welcome to the Nerds of Prey. We're bridging the gap between faith and fandom by introducing you to the leading folks on the front lines of nerd ministry. These are the people I have met as I plan a church for nerds, geeks, and gamers. I found them, so you don't have to. I'm Nerd Pastor Nate. This is a Checkpoint Church podcast that drops once a month on our Podcast Friday over on our Twitch channel. Each episode of the podcast will feature someone at the intersection of faith and fandom. We'll then sit down with them and learn their story. How did they first discover that God is in pop culture, and where do they see things going from here? Folks, our guest for today is a real treat for our latest episode. We're going to be hearing from Luke, also known as FrostByteIV from LoveThyNerd. In this pod, we get into how Frost first connected to LTN and some of the things that he has discovered along the way. We also talk about what it means to be a digital missionary and how that's being done in the current zeitgeist. With that, let's get into the show. Here is our latest Nerd of Prey, Luke or Frost from LoveThyNerd. Well, thank you so much, Frost, for joining us. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to call you Frost or Luke during this. One of my big things with like all of the, on Twitch so often, I call people by their usernames that it is so challenging for me to not call them by username or by handle. So yeah, I don't know if you also mirror that, because I know you guys have a lot of crossover between IRL and online stuff. But
yeah, that's a whole story in itself too. And I'll get into like how I kind of met some of the people from LTN and stuff. But like very early on, like everyone was calling me Frost, like in person. I was like, dude, that's so weird. Please stop. And then it was just a learning process of like, I don't care anymore, to the point where on stream, when new people pop in, like my whole spiel, I'll give this stuff. And then I'll say like, my name's Luke or Frost. You could call me either of those. I don't care anymore.
Well, that's a great place to start. Let's start out with just who are you? Who are you? And then where are you currently? I like to ask this question, both like physically, where are you? But also, where are you on the interwebs? What places are you most active? So who are you and where are you?
Yeah, so like I just said, my name is Luke or FrostByteIV on the internet. I'm all over the place. So physically, I'm like in the Midwest, like right outside Louisville, Kentucky. That is the Midwest, not the South, if you ask anyone in this area. I stream on Twitch. I'm on Twitter, all these places. I'm a full-time IRL events coordinator for LoveThyNerd and a streamer on their Twitch page, as well as just doing my own stuff.
Awesome. Well, the answer to this next question is almost always mixing pot. It's always potpourri. It's always, I'm a little bit of everything. But I'm changing the question a little bit for everybody to say, if you had to, what is the main flavor of nerd that you are? If somebody had to pick out one particular flavor from the nerd soup that is Luke, what would be that flavor?
Well, it's funny you just specifically point that out, because I have several things written down. Sure. But I'd say my biggest fandom is probably video games. That's kind of what I just remember growing up with, all sorts of different video games. I'll go into this a little bit later, but I had like, a Game Boy very early on. We got a console, like an old console. We were like late to the party. But like my high school years, I just remember like Xbox LAN parties and all sorts of stuff. So definitely, and that's what I do on the internet. I talk to people about video games and play video games on the internet with people. But closely followed behind that, I'm, super into movies, TV, board games, that sort of thing.
Well, let's dive into those childhood origins then. Let's dive into what did it look like to very first become a nerd? I think, when did you first discover that maybe you were a nerdy type?
Like I said, my first console was a Game Boy Pocket. And it was the translucent purple, like very 90s Game Boy Pocket. And I loved it. I actually got a kit for my Nintendo Switch, my Joy-Cons. I swapped out the case, just the boring gray case, for translucent purple, kind of as a throwback to my first console. So constant reminder there of where I got my origin of being a nerd, a gamer. But my first TV console was the original PlayStation, not even like the brick one, not even the like PlayStation 1 that has all the nice rounded corners and all of that. But I'm pretty sure we got it like right when the like PlayStation 2 was dropping, or it was like right around the corner at the very least, because my parents bought it used from a friend with like a ton of games. But I just remember playing all like these weird IP games that my parents would get, like, or not weird, but not any like mainstream. When people are like, "Oh, what do you think? What game do you think of when you think of the PlayStation?" We were like playing like Scooby-Doo, Tom and Jerry, like Star Wars Episode 1, like Phantom Menace video game, not anything like mainstream. But that's what I remember.
And this was very much like
Also,
the family console, I'm taking it, right? This
yeah,
was like what y'all
yeah.
played together. What would have been your first console that was like, this is mine, and you got to ask permission to play it? What would that have been?
Oh, it was like, I mean, besides like my Game Boy,
Right.
or I mean, probably probably our GameCube, or like we
Hmm.
got a GameCube, and that was like the first console that was like, I had one of those tiny like CRT like
Sure.
DVD combo like TVs that were like, I don't know, 20 inches, maybe less, in my room. And I had that like plugged in there, and I'd play like, me and my brother would play all the time, but that was like in my room. I could, play that whenever I wanted to.
Yeah. No, for most of us, we tend to have a kind of separate life between our faith and what we grew up in the church. Maybe you did go to church, maybe you went to youth group, maybe whatever that
Uh-huh.
looked like. But typically we didn't see the two blend. Whereas now it's kind
Hmm.
of commonplace to have a console in the youth room at the church or whatever it may
Yeah,
be. But growing up, that wasn't really the case. So
right.
where did you first
100%.
find that intersection between those two worlds? And maybe you didn't grow up in a faith background, so I don't make any assumptions there either. But what was
Yeah.
that discovery like?
Well, I definitely did grow up with a faith background, and it was like very commonly taught that, like, when you grow up, you put away childish
Mm,
things, and some of those childish things are things like video games and all these like nerdy things. And I was definitely taught that, but it was by the time I was off on my own, I wasn't thinking like that. I definitely dug into, scripture and developed that on my own. And well, through other like better faith, or like better, I would say better churches that I've been a part of,
mhm.
realizing like, okay, that's not necessarily the case. There's a good balance that you can find. More on that later. But there was a point where it was actually the year after college where I was off on my own, like I had a job. I didn't have school anymore. I could do whatever the heck I wanted. And I played a lot of video games, specifically Destiny when it first dropped. You know, you've seen it played. I don't know if you've actually played it yourself, but it is a very grindy game, and you
Mhm.
can spend just hours a day, each day. And that's what I was doing. I was playing a lot of that. I was kind of isolating myself from people because I'm like, oh, I got to squeeze these 3 raids in today
Right.
and spend, like 6 hours just doing that. And, there's opportunities to be able to do that with community, but I was just, looking LFG groups, like just trying to find people to crank it out quick just so I could get all my loot. So it came to the point where it's like it was hurting my relationships, it was hurting my community, and I was at the point where I'm like, I just need to throw all this stuff away
Mm.
because it's taking too much time. And that was from my upbringing of like, if something's too much, like you throw it away.
Sure.
It's like you don't try to sell it because it's of the devil. Just burn it. And I was like ready to do that. But through some really good counseling and through my relationships, I was talking about, or like was told, there's a way to redeem that time. You don't have to be alone in that. Like it's not necessarily a bad thing, but like God can redeem that for good and like use it for him. And so from then on, I was just looking into how to use that to connect with people instead of like isolate myself away. And so thankfully it's not, I would say it's not that difficult to do with, just online multiplayers now. And especially like this is kind of when I discovered Twitch and like the YouTube content creation side of things. So not only did I start using that in my local community of like, at the time, like me and my roommate, we used that to connect and we played Destiny. We had our 2 TVs side by side in our apartment and would play together. But then that's when I started to look into like, how can I meet other people? How can I reach people through like Twitch and YouTube and stuff? And I started that pretty early on. It didn't go too far because just a lot of life changes. But yeah, just that's kind of where it clicked of, hey, I can use this to redeem the time and use it for good instead of just to shut myself away from other people.
Yeah. So you found it a little bit in just your own personal wrestling and struggles with these things and trying to figure out where was redemption, where was there some
Hmm.
purpose things, how are you going to find deeper meaning? And then somewhere
Yeah,
along the way, you worked your way into where you are now, and that is as a part of Love Thy Nerd. So I'd love to hear more
hmm,
about how did that first kick off? Where did that connection happen? It sounds like you'd already discovered that
sure.
intersection before Love Thy Nerd, but somewhere along the way, the two met. So what did that look
Yeah,
like?
yeah. So this is a perfect place to like kind of pick that up because after that, after I started like trying to redeem that time of like, okay, this is right after college, so I'm trying to figure that out. But soon after that, I moved, got a new job. So I got married soon after that, so like tons of life changes. I was just super busy. I didn't really have time to put into to like all of this, let alone like even play video games. And it took a natural just like backseat for a time until I started getting back into it. I was playing with my friends online and stuff, but I wasn't really focused on like the community building side of it. It also wasn't a distraction for me. But fast forward to the pandemic and when the world shut down, I saw that need for community again where it was like we had friends like meeting on Zoom like just to like hang out,
Right.
and people were just like we weren't going meeting physically in church, and there was everything was closed, like everyone was locked up at home, and there was that community, that need for community that people were just like hungry for and searching for. And so because of that, I was like, I don't have any experience, like I tried this in the past, but like let me try it again and just start streaming. And I, at the time I was like, man, I really want to play this game, Surviving Mars. It's not a super exciting game to watch, but it's like I just want to play it and I'm just going to go live. So I started streaming, and to my one viewer, my wife. And but it slowly started to grow, and I had friends tuning in, and that was a good time. But then I realized I could use it for like what I originally thought like years ago, for redeeming that time and for building that positive community. Because on Twitch, if I wanted to watch, like I'm into Halo, if I wanted to watch someone play Halo, like all the top streamers are like super cracked at the game, and they are, they're not necessarily family friendly or like encouraging at all. They're, more often than not, they're, toxic, proud, arrogant. And just seeing that for the majority of Twitch, it was very hard to find someone that was just loving and encouraging. And so I'm like, I want to be that person. And so I started doing that because I'm like, I'm the only one doing it. Well, to my surprise, I was not the only one doing it. And through that, I met more and more communities, more and more streamers that loved Jesus and just wanted to be a safe space for people to come hang out and build community there. And so one of those communities was Love Thy Nerd. And like I said, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so they were trying to figure out the whole like online thing as well, because a big chunk, and I'll get into this, but a big chunk of LTN is to go to conventions.
Sure.
You go to where the people are. The people were going to conventions and those conventions weren't happening anymore because the world shut down. And so they were like, well, we're trying to meet nerds. Where are the nerds going if not conventions? And that's on the onlines, on different streams and stuff. And so they were just getting their start on streaming. But I was able to chat with them, like found out Bubba, one of the founders of Love Thy Nerd, was coming to the area. So I'm like, I would love to meet you. And Matt, who I found out was already in the area, met them pretty early on. And we chatted about like our mission and vision and values of like what we were each doing. And I found out very early on that like we shared the same like passion and same vision. And so I basically was just like, well, how can I help you guys? Because I'm not in it to get big. I'm in it to build community and share the love of Jesus. And you guys are already doing that. And I feel like we could reach more people if we team up. And so that's kind of how it started.
That
Started
led
kind of,
to title of a nerd culture missionary.
yeah,
That I know is how you introduced yourself at the beginning,
yeah,
right? You wanted to
yeah,
partner into this thing and serve as a missionary alongside of this organization
uh-huh,
that was kind of finding its sea legs on its own. So
yeah,
yeah, I'm curious to hear more about that and how that actual partnership took place from where you were
Yeah.
you were interested, forming relationships, getting to know the people, and then now we're entering into a place where you're partnering.
Yeah. So I think the thing that hooked me, like, the whole conversation was awesome. I'm like, I really like you guys. They really liked me for some reason. But the thing that like hooked me, Bubba said, we want to love people like Jesus did first, and then earn the right to share the gospel. And from a personal experience, I've just seen so many people just like, there's multiple ways to do it, but they're like, for the most part, with my upbringing and the church that I was in, it was very much like gospel in your face, kind of shoving it down people's throats, which works for some people. It does not work for all people. And I've seen people burned by that. But the fact that they just wanted to love people first and bring them in, and not to like bamboozle them or anything, because we were very open about our faith and we tell people Jesus loves them all the time. But to be just like, hey, come be yourself. Let's build a relationship first where you can trust me to the point where I can share whatever I want and you're not going to run away from me.
Well, and my understanding of Love Thy Nerd and Game Church and their mission, like you mentioned, coming out of convention culture, you think of Christians at conventions, you don't picture them inside the gaming halls. You picture them right outside of the gaming halls, screaming into a megaphone, right?
Exactly.
And so, of all people that's in this position, I'm sure that Bubba and the other founding members of LTN and the members of Game Church before that, they have a real perception on how toxic that delivery of the gospel can be.
Yeah.
And so that's probably an important mission for them for that reason as
well. And that's one side of it too, is the like, Love Thy Nerd is, we want to be that bridge between church culture and nerd culture. And a bridge goes both ways. So we want to approach nerds and be like, hey, I don't know if you have a faith background or not, but like more often than not, people have been burned by the church at some point. And whether that sets them up. So like from a personal experience, from my upbringing, I don't agree with a lot of stuff that I was taught like in the church, but I didn't let that, like, I feel like I came out of that well and was able to learn from that experience and build my own beliefs based off of scripture and just recent teachings. But for some people, similar background, that just shuts them completely off to the gospel and they want nothing to do with it. And so we can come in and be like, hey, we are not like those guys outside of this convention with signs and screaming into a megaphone. We just want, like, let's sit down and play a game. Like, I'm not even going to mention anything. Like, you're going to kind of discover that I'm a Christian as things unfold. And like, as you're asking, like, why I'm different or like why I'm even at this convention. And so that is just part of us being nerd culture missionaries, of being able to go, like I said, we have a calling to reach nerds, and we have a unique opportunity because we are nerds. They're often, when people think of missionaries, I think we just think, oh, you're going overseas and reaching an unreached people group or reaching like a foreign culture. But we have that unique opportunity where it's like, no, we're in that culture. And like, that's where we're called to. And so we don't have to like learn another language. We speak nerd already and we can reach those people. And I think the idea of people have of missionaries is like going to those foreign countries. Well, in order to do that, it's like you have to like spend years learning a language, learning the culture, make sure you're not offending like anyone in that culture. And the end goal is to be able to train up people to be able to, like, from that culture, reach their own people, right? And so it's like they're almost putting all of that work in to go overseas to then train up people to replace them, basically. If it's like a healthy like mission, like I feel like that's like, I think it's valid, and people are definitely called to do that. And I love that. I have many friends that are missionaries overseas, but we, like I said, have that unique opportunity where we don't have to go through all of that. And we're reaching a people group that more often than not, people just don't know really exists. And so I think that's why we have that just unique opportunity to not only reach those people, reach nerds, love nerds and nerd culture, but kind of create awareness about it.
Yeah. So I've had several of these conversations now, and I've met with a lot of people that are doing online ministry in this way. And they all kind of approach it with the same humble spirit that you are, where I don't know if you would even define yourself as being a pastor. This was originally going to be like nerdy pastors, but most people are like, oh, no, I'm not a pastor. Oh, no, this is just me. And that's fine. I'm not going to like make anybody call themselves a pastor. But I think that's an interesting piece of humility is like where I'm finding that more and more of these people that are doing pastoral work that aren't seeing themselves in this way, they're seeing themselves in that light. And so I would love to hear more about your particular call, because the truth is, like, we all think the pastor is one thing, but the truth is that every pastor does a little bit of different stuff everywhere they go. It's so circumstantial and so based on the scenario that they're in. So for you specifically in Love Thy Nerd, what do you understand your call as a missionary? You know, how is it different from Bubba's? How is it different from, you know, insert other LTN member here? What makes you a missionary here?
Well, like the way you phrase that is, I feel like, is really important, because we each have, like, all of us in this space have the desire to share the gospel. And there is, I think we can all agree, there's one gospel that we can all share to point people to truth. And our unique calling is all completely different. And so, but we're all working towards the same thing. And so a thing I love to repeat is like, hey, we're on the same team. We're all working together. This is not a competition. You are like, your content is not like, not Christian enough, does like not exist, because we each have our own calling. And so my specific calling, I believe, goes back to that, like, redeeming the time of like, the thing that got its hook in me early on was I wanted to build that community. I wanted to love people. I want to love people like as Jesus would, earn that right to share the gospel. And so that looks like me as simple as like just streaming, being welcoming to people and building that community of people coming in where we share the same love and like just can talk about the same things. And so people that hop into your stream, that looks like you talking about anime, the different game, like indie games that you're playing. For me, like, people are hopping in and we're talking about Destiny and Halo and tabletop games. And it's that unique opportunity to be yourself and relate it to like what I believe and what I want to share in my mission there. And so just being able to create like a positive and welcoming community on the internet, where the internet is such a dark place, and it's easy to hide behind a mask and be negative all the time. And people do that all the time. I'm sure you've experienced that with people coming in your chat, or mods exist for a reason, to kind of just like try to put those at bay. But
well, I think, speaking of being yourself and of discerning where to kind of head forward. So one of the first decisions we made as Checkpoint was that we were going to stream as Checkpoint Church. You know, there were a lot of options on the table, right? We could have streamed as just Checkpoint or Checkpoint Community or as Nerd Pastor Nate, or we could have done a lot of different things there. But I chose, we're going to be super upfront and say Checkpoint Church from day one. And we're going to let people know this is a church presence. This is a community that is a church. I am a pastor. We're going to be as upfront as we can. But then over on TikTok, on the other hand, that's more of a personable platform. And so Checkpoint Church doesn't even have a TikTok account. I have a TikTok account that I use for sometimes Checkpoint Church promotion. There's a difference between who is leading the forum, who's being the one outspoken, and who's being the presence. You have the unique opportunity that you are both. You have streams that you do for Love Thy Nerd, and then you also have streams that you do as Frostbite 4. So I would love to talk more about that distinction, if there is one, and how you maintain a sense of boundaries or connection between your two very, different and distinct streaming platforms.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to have, so we have the Love Thy Nerd voice. So like Love Thy Nerd on Twitter and on our website, and like everywhere you see Love Thy Nerd, there's 6 of us like on full-time staff. And then there's multiple people that we write that have written for like our website with different articles and stuff, but it has one like common voice, but it's made up of multiple voices. And I think that's super valuable, because again, it goes back to like, not one organization is going to reach everyone. The vibe that Checkpoint Church has is going to reach a specific people group, and the vibe that Love Thy Nerd has on our stream is going to reach a completely different one. And so it's important to know that we're, not one organization, not one streamer is the answer to like reach all the people of the internet, of Twitch or any specific platform, but we all have a unique voice that is going to reach someone else. No matter if you have, no matter if you're a partner on Twitch and have like hundreds of viewers, or if you have like a constant 3 viewers and you're streaming on Twitch, those 3 people are not going to jump into a stream with like hundreds, thousands of people. They love that tiny community of like, I feel like I have that not like the undivided attention of this streamer because he's talking to 3 people. That is just as valuable as someone that's got, tons of viewers. And so because they're reaching those 3 people that the big guy's not going to reach. And so I find that value of streaming on my own, having my own voice, even though it lines up with LTN and what we believe, but it's just completely different. I'm a little bit more competitive. I'm like when we're playing Halo or something, or like I'm diving into the nitty gritty of that, where on LTN, it's more so just like we're playing silly games like Power Wash Sim or something, and just like, being open to anyone. And the game, I think the common thing through that though is the game always comes second. I'm always like, if I feel like I'm being distracted by chat and I'm like focusing on a game, like that's where I'm like doing it wrong. And so I think that's the common thing through that. But yeah, to me, like LTN 1 is not like Love Thy Nerd is not the answer to all. Like we can't, it's not, everyone needs to tune into Love Thy Nerd. We can't be live 24/7. And so it's setting other people up with other separate voices, myself included, for success. And so if we can't be live, we try to point people to, hey, Checkpoint's live. Hey, Frost is live. Hey, Tierney, our community manager, she streams, she's live. Radio Matt, our radio station manager and content, guy, like he's live. Go watch him. I'm like lurking in a friend of mine, another like nerd pastor, the Lift, or Mark. I've got him, like there's several people with, like I said, that all have the same mission of sharing the gospel, just with different voices. And we want to set people up for that. So that's why I think it's very important to have that organization that's going to make your kind of like big connections, but then have your smaller voices to go out and spread the word that way.
So let's expand on that a little bit. So we've talked about in-house, right? You have your team of 6, you have your writers, you have people that are very much affiliated with LTN, but then you also have other people that you support. And that's something that I've commented on before that I think is the best part of Twitch, is the collaborative nature, the ability to raid, the ability to lift up other voices in that way, and to put recommended streamers and to host. That's a big thing. So what does that look like as far as LTN connecting so many groups together? Because I think that's something that LTN really does in an exemplary way. You have the unique scenario of, at least how it's been explained to me, LTN doesn't see themselves as a church, right? And so you don't have that kind of, not even baggage, but you don't have that kind of structure that you're working towards. So you're able to be really connectional. So is that important to LTN, I guess, is the first question. And then what do you do in order to maintain that sense of connection outside of your own in-house structure?
Yeah, so I think it's important to state that like Love Thy Nerd is not like, we're not trying to make it big. Like obviously we're like, if one day we could hit Twitch partner, that'd be awesome. If one day we could have like, thousands on thousands of people in our community, like great. But like that is not, our goal is not to just like grow. It is to train other people up to do the same thing that we're doing. And that's not necessarily like, for example, not necessarily like, hey, this is how you put on a game night, or of like having the like LTN stamp of approval. It's not the how to create a Love Thy Nerd game night. It is how to make a community game night. We put on a game night here locally, me and a buddy of mine, and it's not the like, my home church is Sojourn. It's not the Sojourn game night. It's not the Love Thy Nerd game night. It's just community game night, super generic, because we want everyone to feel invited. And so what that looks like on the internet is we'll create different resources to train up people on how to do something. So about a year ago, we did actually probably exactly a year ago, we did a Minecraft league. And so if you've ever seen like Lego Masters or anything like that, basically people put teams together. Each week we gave them like a theme, like, hey, here's like food. Just take that word and do something cool in Minecraft. And so like each week there was a panel of judges. It brought community together. There was a winner at the end of it all. They won a cool prize. But we took everything we learned from that and we put it in a resource and we put it on our website to be like, here's how you could do it in your local community or your online community or whatever. And it's absolutely free. It goes back to us not being at the center of this. It's like we realize we can't do it alone and we want to multiply, not necessarily grow, but we want to multiply, and we want you to be able to repeat it in your community, whether that's online or locally. And we want to help train up others to love and serve nerd culture well.
Yeah. So it's through resourcing, it's through equipping and providing for other organizations. But I'm curious, as the team kind of discerns this, right, as they move forward, and this is kind of an adapted question from one of our community members, Kung Fu Carl.
Okay.
What shapes that as you discern it? Because no doubt you're a big enough organization at this point, you have tons of possibilities,
right?
But you only have so much time. And so what allows you to take that step forward towards saying community game night is what we're going to do next? What are either the goals or the milestones or the things you're looking out for to know this is what we're doing next?
Yeah. So honestly, like a good example of that is back to like where I first, set foot into LTN and started helping there is LoveThyNerd we were going to conventions. There was like 5 or 6 conventions, maybe more, that we were going to. And then all of a sudden that is gone. Like conventions do not exist. And it's just like, what are we doing? And it's that being just like adaptive of like, okay, where are the nerds? Like, what can we do in the meantime until stuff comes back? And that was, oh, hey, let's go online and like figure out what that is. And so then that's kind of how I discovered LTN. And I was just kind of looking at the needs of like, okay, how, what does this look like? And so now I'm fully behind LTN, but I'm like a volunteer. And so it looked like me mostly as like a consultant almost of like, okay, you guys are on YouTube right now, but like Twitch has this more community focus, like you were saying, like it has raids, it has emotes, it like has all of this stuff. I feel like you guys should move to Twitch because it's just more community. And like if we're talking about going to where the nerds are of like and the gamers are, they're not at conventions right now, so they're online. But online, I firmly believe they're on Twitch. And so this was before like Tim the Tapman and like YouTube really started making their move. I still to this day think Twitch is the better place just to form community. But anyway, that story is all just kind of like we see the current needs and we adapt, and we kind of depend on people to like see that need. And so like I said, there's 6 of us on full-time staff. We can't do everything. We can't be in every corner of the internet alone. And so we have people, like I'm saying, our website, our articles are all written by volunteers basically that see something, like they sit down and they see a theme through Stranger Things and they're like, oh, there's like actually some like biblical truth and like a Christian's perspective that we can watch this. And so I'm going to type this out and send it in. And like we have a team of editors that go through, again, volunteers that like go through it, make sure it's, the LoveThyNerd voice and, not speaking heresy or anything. And then we'll publish that. And that's our community kind of just seeing a need and filling that need. And so that's kind of how we've operated for a while. But recently we put a team together, like a collaborative, like intensive roundtable group. That is the unofficial title. But we put a team together that consisted of some of our big like partners and our like just community members that have been around for a while and that like love what we do, as well as staff. And we do have like a board. And so some board members, they all teamed up and kind of just sat down and said, all right, this is where we see LTN in 5 years. How do we get there? And it was like over several months, and just saying like, okay, this is where we see LTN, and kind of creating that roadmap. And so just some of the highlights from that we would love to see LTN grow into are, we would love to get plugged into have LTN at 20 conventions in like 5 years. So like throughout the year, that's 20 conventions. I'm moving into into the like IRL event lead. I cannot go to 20 conventions. So part of that looks like us figuring out how can we train up people to lead teams. So it's like, who know, like maybe that could look like a Checkpoint Church team, you know, where someone from your community or like yourself is like, hey, there's this a convention that's close by that we can form a team and we could visit and just love nerds like every year that this rolls by. So currently this year we had 3. Before the pandemic, we had, I think, up to 6, maybe 7, maybe more. But yeah, at the end of 5 years, like, is it possible to get plugged into 20 different ones? Another thing we'd love to see is LTN headquarters, like physical headquarters, where we have office space, because like we're all online. You know how difficult it is to communicate and to like work on things online, but we'd love to see ourselves come together at a physical location. But then using that bigger than just an office space, but like as a community center, almost like a nerd community center, where it's like a co-working space. People can come in and work together and build community in that way. We have a place to host game nights and to like train up people like in a physical location. We have the dream of going international. We have being on the internet, it's so easy for people to tune in from like overseas. Like I'm streaming at 9 a.m. and people are like, all right, I've got to head to bed. It's like 1 a.m. And I'm like, dude, why are you up? But we'd love to see like LTN local go international. And again, it's not like us seeing us. We need to be in like every area, but like people love what we do and they want to see that in their local community. And like, how can we do that and train people up to be able to start that wherever they are? I could go on. There's a lot of different things, but it all came out of like this group that is passionate about what we do and where they see us going. And it was really encouraging to see people just like, I think the only place they didn't see us was the moon.
I think that's awesome. There are so many questions that are like burning through my mind as I think about the possibilities and the potential. And I think it's important to have structures of accountability within something.
Yeah.
Checkpoint is affiliated with the United Methodist Church. We're a church plant at UMC. So we have that like umbrella structure. But even then, this is an umbrella structure of people that don't really understand exactly what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like there are some people that are like more on board than others, but it sounds like what you got and what you guys have come up with over the past year is people that not only care about Love Thy Nerd, but also people that are in that world. And so they're actually able to discern like a viable future and to have their fingers on the pulse of what to do as you move forward with whatever steps you take. And so, yeah, I think that we'll have to, as you guys continue to work on that, I'd love to learn more about what that looks like and how that's working out. But I'm intrigued by the concept and by the possibilities as we continue to delve into these worlds of structure building in these things that literally have no structure. But I think that's really fascinating. I want to know more about you particularly within this. So what does it look like to be a member of the team, a missionary here with reference to the future of LTN? I know you guys just went really recently as of this recording, but it'll have been a couple months whenever it comes out. You guys have just been through some restructuring. You had some people that had to take a step away. You've had some people that have had to take steps up. And I know your role, as you just mentioned with IRL, has kind of taken a shift. So where do you see your future? Is it kind of amorphous like that? It just kind of adapts? Or do you see it as being like, no, I have my goals that I want for myself at LTN? What does that look like?
Yeah. As you stated, there was a little bit of restructuring, not because of any bad reason, but because we are growing. Like we have communities on Facebook and Discord that are just like growing exponentially, like thousands of members on each. And it's like, there's 6 staff members. So it's, how do you keep up with that, you know? And so there was definitely some restructuring just set in place in order to try to prevent burnout. And so if you've been a part of ministry, it sounds like a big chunk of your life. And I'm sure you've seen it just as many times as I have, of just that burnout of that ministry is, because you have that desire and you genuinely love it, but it takes up a lot of your time. And so we want to take care of people in the organization, like the full-time members, but like even our volunteers and just the people in the community, and we don't want to burn people out. And so part of that restructure was like, no, we've got it, like we have to have a thing set to where we can take time off and we can unplug and all of that. And we have to like divvy up the responsibilities in a way that it's not any one person like doing a million things. And so for me, that specifically looks like, well, Bubba moved up into the CEO position. And so he's got a lot of responsibilities added on because of that. And so one of his past responsibilities was just like IRL, we call it IRL, but just like in-person like events. And that looks like us going to these different conventions, get like simple things like getting us there, getting us to volunteer in booths. Like that's something I didn't really go into. Like when we go to these conventions, we're not just going and saying hi to people. Like we're volunteering in publishers and developers like booths and running demos for them and just loving and serving them with their immediate needs, which is a super cool, unique opportunity. But someone needs to like get our foot in the door there and get us signed up for stuff like that, getting an Airbnb and just coordinating all of that. And so doing that several times throughout the year, that, someone needs to specifically have their hand in that. We have LoveThyNerd LTN Con coming up, which you are going to have a part in that. And we have a ton of people coming to that to just bring people together to build community we talked about that like connection online, but being able to bring like internet friends together and build community in that way. And again, to train up people to love and serve their nerdy neighbor as well. Like that's why we put this on. It's more of a conference than a convention where we're flying people out to give keynotes and breakouts on how to love people in different aspects of nerddom. And being able to put something like that on and bring people together, it's such a unique opportunity. So I'll be doing that, as well as just what other opportunities do we have? Can we do like a lot more smaller meetups in different pockets of community and like bring people in that way? Can we, like, we're mostly in the tabletop scene right now, but can we go to like esports events and love and serve people in that way? Can we go to more of these like video game events like E3 or some of the other PAXs? So that's kind of where I'm moving into, is kind of navigating these IRL events and how can we love and serve people in those areas.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'm excited for the future of LTN as you guys continue to grow and develop and figure out what the future looks like.
Yeah.
But I want to ask, just a couple questions left of you as a missionary in your role and in your position and in your specific call. Okay. The answer to this question is always yes, but I always leave it open because maybe somebody's going to be the one to push back on it. But do you believe that God can use fandoms for good? And if so, I'd love to hear just an encouraging like opportunity that you've seen opened or a success story as a missionary or a time that you've seen God use these fandoms for good.
So yes, the answer is yes.
It always is.
Yeah. And I have it in all caps with an exclamation point. But it just comes down to that connection over a video game or a board game where we're gathering together and people, like, that is our first connection of like, hey, we share this common bond of like this, whatever it is, like whether it's a board game, video game, a TV show, we have that connection where we could just talk for hours. And then it always brings up an opportunity to like relate it back, especially with kind of what I was saying of a lot of these like shows and movies coming out, whatever media, whatever it is in pop culture, you always have an opportunity to look at it from a Christian perspective and being able to share that experience. And so like one of our articles on our website is, can Christians play Dungeons and Dragons? And you like recently have had the opportunity to do like a viewing of the Satanic Panic and the Battle for the Imagination from Derek White. And so like, that's still a thing. That is still a thing today, that people believe like Dungeons and Dragons is evil and satanic. And that's something that we can use to be like, we can actually look at this through like a Christian lens and pull like biblical truths and like turn something that you think is evil into something that we can use as a sermon illustration. And so I'm encouraged to see people like yourself of taking pop culture and like recent things and being able to pull biblical truths out of it and turn that into a sermon with like scripture behind it. And I'm encouraged to see people like doing that in short-term content, like on TikTok and stuff, of like, hey, I was watching this and I thought of this biblical truth because whatever, and like just relate it back to, and that captures people because it's something that they love, whatever it is in pop culture. And so specifically, oh man, I have a ton of stories. I guess one time I was trying to not convince, but like, you've had this experience of, hey, I'm a pastor on the internet, or like myself, I'm a missionary on the internet or in nerd culture. And people are like, how does that work? And it's just like, this one guy I was talking to, I was like, at the time, what was the show? It was one of the Marvel shows. Oh, Moon Knight. I'm like, you watching Moon Knight? He's like, oh yeah, I love Moon Knight. And like, we just started talking about that. And then I can't remember the example, but I slipped something in of just like, I see this like biblical truth and how this works. And like, I just went off on that and like made that connection with him. And I was like, I just met you and we had zero connection. You did not believe what I did. Not that he didn't believe what I did was valid, but I'm like, you were on the fence. You didn't see how that worked. But then I just brought up something nerdy that is happening right now. And I just started talking about that. And we were both super into it. We were both like trying to predict the end. And then I was able to insert like a biblical truth and turn that around. And then we were talking about that. And I'm like, that is what I do. That is why it's so important to connect with people first. Because if I just dove into like, hey, I think you're a sinner, people would walk away. But if we can connect, we can use those experiences that we both share in our love for like pop culture. I don't think that's going anywhere. I think that is a valuable asset to have to connect with people.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of an interesting little fun fact. But so I wrote for Love Thy Nerd right at the very beginning, whenever we were first working through things. I got in touch with Drew Dixon and I was like, I would love to write an article for Love Thy Nerd, just kind of starting this journey and encouraging anybody else that wants to get into this nerd ministry. And so we had a little bit of a relationship there, and publishing an article is a great experience. I've been with him since the very beginning of this thing for myself. And I sent Drew a second article on Undertale, and it was like 8 pages long. And it was basically what I do for nerdy sermons. And I sent it to Drew, and Drew sent it back, and he was like, great stuff. Can we get it down to a page? And I was like, oh, I don't think so. So we decided not to go forward with it. But then that evolved into what is now our nerdy sermons that we do each week. And so it's really interesting how there's all these different models and these things that we create and the people that we reach, kind of like we've talked about repeatedly throughout this conversation, of there are people that Love Thy Nerd is going to reach that Checkpoint Church isn't. And there's people that Checkpoint Church is going to reach that Love Thy Nerd isn't. And we're going to be able to do this work in tandem with each other in really remarkable ways, and lift each other up whenever we can. And other times say, hey, not really right for what we're doing right now. Right. And that's an important thing to discern as we figure these things out. But as we continue to move forward, as we continue to form these relationships, we've talked already about the connection that we're forming and the connections that Love Thy Nerd has with other churches and other groups. I'm curious to know, without just considering Love Thy Nerd's future, what do you think the future is for all of these nerdy ministries, for this connection of faith and fandom? And the way I like to ask this question is, if you could dream, right? If you could dream, where are we at in 5, 10, 20 years of this nerd ministry that's just kind of burgeoning right now? What do you see that looking like in the future?
So I think that the collaborative spirit is definitely there among like believers in the Twitch space and the content creation space. I believe everyone wants to work together, and that's a start. I would love to see us do more together. And there's several things that we have in the works right now in order to like help achieve that, because I think especially in like a streaming space and a video game space, it's easy to get competitive. It's easy to see like, man, Checkpoint, they're like really reaching the people I wanted to reach. Like, how can I get more viewers? Like, there's a healthy competitiveness. That's not healthy to see kind of like what other people are doing and wanting that. And I think it's important for us to kind of see where our strengths are and capitalize on that. And so people like recently, people like Susie Live, he's kind of got his thumb on the Final Fantasy like things right now. And so it's people come to LTN, first time chatters. That's an awesome new tool that Twitch has introduced recently. I can see when people are hopping in for the first time, which is highly important for a multi-stream like us, to where like we have multiple people. Like somebody could have tuned in like while Tyranny was streaming or while Matt and Bubba was streaming, and then they tune in with me and I think they're new.
Right.
Now I can tell like if they're new or not. But anyway, that's a tangent. But I can be like, hey, what I usually do is like, hey, how'd you find the stream? What games do you like playing? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, I'd love to get to know you. And then while they're kind of typing that up, I give my whole spiel. I'm Luke or Frost. You can call me whatever. This is LoveThyNerd. We're an organization that exists to love and serve our nerdy neighbors. And I just go way into that. But then they reply like, oh, I like games. Like, I'm super into anime and like, I like all these indie games. And I'm like, I know the people for you. Like, quick shout out to Checkpoint Church. You should definitely stay here because they're, you may or may not be live at the time. But I'm like, when you see them go live, you should check them out because they're into like all the same stuff you're at. And I think that collaborative spirit of being able to realize that like, okay, anime and all of that is not my wheelhouse. Like I believe I can love and serve this person to, the best of my ability. But like, I know other places that they'll be welcome. And being able to have that mindset of like, I don't necessarily like, I'm not in it to get, 75 congruent viewers so I can get Twitch partner. I'm in it to make a difference and love and serve this person, no matter like what walk of life they're in or what they're into. And I think I know someone that could serve them better. I just think that's unheard of in the Twitch community because it is a little bit competitive of like, no, I want to be successful. There is a good, healthy way to be successful to reach more people. But what does that look like? And so recently, I'm looking at it right now. Behind you is that trophy of recently I've had kind of this. Too. Yep, wow. There it is, the crown right hidden behind your. If you like moved your head just right,
I need to get it
like
just right so that it's just on there.
But being able to do something like that, the community event we did. And if you are listening to this and you have no idea what we're talking about, I had the opportunity to just put together this ultimate community showdown where we got several like-minded communities together, including Checkpoint Church, including Susie and Aki and God Squad, and like so many other communities. We pulled them all together and we just had some stupid fun in Fall Guys, where almost 60 people from all these different communities are just like rushing to get the crown at the end of this, crazy wipeout like map. And it was something super silly, but it really got people together to like meet other communities. And I've seen people come back from other communities. Like Checkpoint and LoveThyNerd right now have a lot of overlap to where there's people that are tuning into both communities. I've got people that are from the Lux community that are coming over, and there's that overlap and that sense of camaraderie now to where it's like, no, there's other people out there. And it's not like we're trying to steal views or anything, but it's that, no, we're not alone. And we realize that we can't be live 24/7. Not one of us can be live 24/7. It's just, that is impossible. And so being able to work together to where we can almost achieve being live 24/7 of like just spread across multiple communities, that's super, super important to me. And I would love to dig into that more and make more of that happen. Man, I've been talking on that for a minute. I can't remember what the question was.
Well, it was just on the future of faith and fandom and pop culture and where we're headed from here. But I think that what you've said is important. It'll have already aired by the time that this podcast comes out, but it's not been aired live as of the time of us talking here. Sure. But I had Jate on the last episode.
Okay.
And Jate was talking about how he's got this like intimidation factor of he's at like 35 viewers right now. And he doesn't really want more. Like, of course he wants more, but he's like, this is as many as I'm comfortable juggling. And like, he's had the 70 viewers at a time where he's been rated a bunch and he's got 70 people, but it's like, that's too much.
Yeah.
From a pastoral aspect, I've always heard the magic number is 150, but that's not a live stream. That's like in a congregation. You don't want more than 150 people in your congregation, because then you need to hire somebody else, because it's unmanageable for you as a pastor to deal with more than 150 people. And so there are these magic numbers that we've come up with, and there's this tension that we come up with. And the reality is, like, the internet is so massive that we just can't possibly imagine a world where we're able to reach as many people as we dream of reaching on our own. It's just not doable. And so being able to work together and to collaborate and to build one another up and to encourage one another, that's the body of Christ, right? That's the thing that we're working towards at the end of the day. And so, I totally agree. I totally affirm what you see as being, I'm a big fan of the connection and a big fan of us moving forward into a deeper sense of and support. Yeah.
Well, that's another nerdy sermon you could do, is the body of Christ. Me and some buddies we're talking about like how that looks in the nerd area. And we talked about like Megazord and how, like each part comes together to form the Megazord. So that's free. You can take that.
That's a free one. I'll take that one with me. There you go. Yeah, once the Megazord comes back into this, we'll figure it out with the next Power Rangers movie with Dr. Montgomery.
I don't think it ever left.
All right. Well, one last question to close us out here. I think this has been a great conversation. Again, I do appreciate your time, but I like to always close these out. Even though it dates these episodes horribly, I still like it, because at the very least, somebody will get a recommendation that maybe they missed whenever it came out. Sure. So our final question always is, what are you watching? What are you playing? And what are you reading right now? And before you ask, reading does count audiobooks. If you're an audiobook listener, that is definitely verified reading. Yeah.
I'm gonna start with the reading, because you and I have had this conversation before. You read like what, 6 books at a time?
Yep. And then the Bible, so 7 total.
So 7. Okay. I threw out 6 just off the top of my head as a random number, but I got pretty close. I'm not a reader. Like, I've tried audiobooks. I listen to a lot of podcasts now. But the one book I'm reading through is really, really slow, is the 5 Levels of Leadership. We're reading through that together as LTN to kind of just bring us together. Also, how can we lead each other well and lead our community well? So that and when I say slow, I mean very slow. I'm pretty sure I started that at the beginning of the year. And I'm not done with it. And then I'm just super thankful for my church that has a reading program that kind of we're able to read, and it kind of sets us up. It's not the scripture that we're going to dive into necessarily for the Sunday sermon coming up, but it goes hand in hand, and it's really good to reflect. And this is another good way to connect with people, but our community, our local community here, there's guys that we meet every Friday to just chat. And that's it. But we started the Southern Indiana Community Group, or a SIC group, SIC, where we're talking everything. There's nerdy stuff in there. We're talking board games and stuff. There's a wood shop section where we're talking about wood projects we're working on and building. But there's a section where it's hey, I did today's daily reading. This is kind of how we can share that and build one another up. So I find that super valuable. And then the less valuable things, what am I watching and playing? I'm a big fan of Bob's Burgers, and I'm watching through Bob's Burgers again because it's just fun and it's easy to turn on at night and unwind. I don't recommend it for everyone, but it's just a ton of fun. It got an awkward start. It was trying to be Family Guy and these other things, but along season 2, maybe season 3, it just became a family comedy. And it's all these family inside jokes of just weird families. It's hilarious. Also watching She-Hulk. That's the new thing that's going on right now. I could go on a tangent of that. I love the content. I love the story. It is fantastic. I think it's hilarious. I just want movies again. Yeah. I'm kind of getting tired of shows, but that's a whole thing. Matt, one of the founders of LTN, disagrees with me. We argued a little bit about it last night. Playing Destiny 2, Season of Plunder. It's a new season that came out this week that we're recording this. Easiest way to describe it is space pirates, and it's awesome. There's a seasonal activity that you're on your space pirate ship in space, and you raid other space pirates and steal their loot. It's fantastic. And then doing a lot of Halo, playing a lot of Halo, diving into the ranked this season, trying to get a little bit sweaty off stream. And then on stream every Friday night, we try to put on Halo community events, bringing people in to play Halo. A couple people from Checkpoint have been playing with us,
awesome.
Trombone. And we try to make it approachable to anyone to allow people to dive into Halo, even if they don't think they're any good.
Yeah, I always know to throw my FPS people over to LTN because they ain't gonna get it out of me. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. If they like win a gachapon that allows them to pick a game for me to play or something, that's pretty much the only way I'm gonna play an FPS.
Ooh,
So,
I'm gonna have to try to win one of those then.
yeah.
So
Well, I'll play it. I've got them. I've got all of them because I've just accumulated them over the years. But we played whenever it first came out, just because I try to play whatever's trendy. And whenever Deathloop came out, I played that, and I played like the first level, and I was like, I'm miserable, you guys. This is such an awful experience. It's a great game. It's a fine story, good stuff going on, but I was like, this is miserable for a non-FPS person. So
I think we all have those games. Like, have you ever played the game? Like, this isn't FPS, but this is kind of what it is for me. Have you ever played the game Outer Wilds?
Yeah.
Okay. People, you didn't get into it? Okay,
really
me
hard.
neither. Me neither. Okay. I'm glad I'm not the only one then. Because like I've heard several great things about it, and the concept of it is really cool. Like if you play through the game once, you could log in and play it again and just go straight to the end, because you're not locked behind anything. Like in a Zelda game, it's like, oh, you need the grapple hook to get into this area. Well, in this game, you could go, if you knew what you were doing, you could just go straight to the end and beat it and roll credits. So you're only locked behind information. But because of that, there's a lot of reading, and I hate reading.
Yeah, I'm a fan of reading, as we've said, but what I'm not a fan of is like linear stuff. So I really want to explore. And so my problem with Outer Wilds was I played it and I explored, and I totally missed the first like milestone that you were supposed to do. And so I was going to a bunch of planets and learning and trying to figure things out. And I was like, none of this makes any sense. And somebody in my chat was like, it's because you missed the like tutorial. And I'm like, well, I don't want to play their way. I want to play my way. And so that's where I get
funny, because that is a game that rewards you for exploring.
Yeah.
But my patience is...
I'm too good at it. I'm too good at exploring. I was trying to play it a la like Fallout and really just go wherever I wanted to and let the story tell itself. Whereas it was like, we'll let you do that, but you need to start at a certain spot. So I was stubborn, I guess. I'll go back and play it eventually. It's got too high of a Metacritic score for me.
I want to finish it because I'm also like working through a backlog of games that I've like, and that's been on my backlog. So I want to beat it, but like, I'm not going to do it on stream because I think that's important for people. Like if you're getting into streaming, you want to play games that you're enjoying. If you're not enjoying a game, your chat is going to know it. So it's like, that's why you don't play FPS games, because you would not enjoy it, and people would not enjoy watching you not enjoy
a very short amount of time.
Yeah. I think it's gold content for like 30 minutes of you just like complaining, or like me complaining about something, but nobody wants to like see someone suffer through something they don't want to play. But I do want to finish it just so I can, because I'm also stubborn and I want to add it. Like I put so much time into it. I want to add it to my list of games beat this year.
Totally.
But yeah, I can't do it on stream because I just complain the whole time.
Wow, that's great. So I'm watching the same thing as you are, watching She-Hulk as well. And I'm enjoying it well enough. I'm never going to let the show live it down. I haven't seen anybody on the internet talking about it, but I'm going to talk about it until it becomes a thing. They made Hulk say bruh, and nobody's addressing it. Hulk says bruh in the very first episode.
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo, 54-year-old Mark Ruffalo said bruh, and I'm not letting him live that down. That's not just going to go by.
I think I saw a meme. I think I did see a meme.
If it's not a meme, it's got to be a meme. I need it to be bigger.
I thought that was hilarious too.
Absurd.
We need to just make it a GIF and like keep posting it in all the Discords.
It's going to be my bruh GIF now. So I'm going to just save it on my phone and I'll post that for my bruh moments. I'm playing Cult of the Lamb and still working my way through that. I'm on the second bishop. So I've beat the first bishop, still working on the second. I'm worried that it is going to require too much grinding and it's going to take too much of my time. As a dad of two, I'm running out of patience with it, but I want to beat it. I'm stubborn. Like I said, same with Outer Wilds. I just got to beat the games. And then I'm reading a manga called Livingstone. It's okay. It's kind of, there are like a set number of souls in the universe, and there are these rocks, and they go from one person to the next. And so we read the story from the perspective of these people that are able to like see people's stones. And I don't know. It's weird. It's kind of like Men in Black meets Soul people, kind of like a soul-based Men in Black story where they're trying to protect the universe and protect these stones. Strange, weird manga. Most mangas typically are pretty weird, but this one has been one that I got from a Manga Spice Cafe box, and so I try to read all of those anyway.
Yeah.
But it's just been all right. But yeah, I will say, I want to note on your reading, you said you've been reading the same book since the beginning of the year. That's okay. regardless of your pace, regardless of how you're reading or how slow or how fast or how many
Uh-huh.
books you read, I think it's just good to read. So
Yeah.
no shade. No shade
I
on
would
how long
love
it
to
takes
I
read
would
a
love
book.
to get I would love to read more, whether that is actually reading something or listening to audiobooks,
Yeah.
because there's just valuable information out there. And like, it's not that I'm like, nah, I think reading's stupid. It's just
Right.
like, I don't make it the priority that I need to make it. So you specifically are an encouragement to me to be able to, like eventually do that, as well as I think you were in the chat at one point where I'm like, all right, guys, like I legit made a form that filled out a spreadsheet of like book recommendations. And I'm like, one day I'll go look at that.
Yeah. But IRL reading is good, but reading
Yeah.
in games, I think you think is not good.
I'm
Don't read in
like,
games.
I don't, the heavy like dialogue games, I'm like, this isn't what I signed up for. That's why I like Tunic so much. Tunic is another tangent. It's my game of the year. It had no reading because it was all in another language. You couldn't read it.
Yeah, it was such an interesting game. That's another one that's on the list for, I'm going to go back and play it. I started it at least, but considering that it's your GOTY, it makes me definitely want to finish it up. All right. Well, Luke, our final real question. This isn't really a question, but more of just an opportunity. Go ahead and shout out, where can people find you, whether it be LTN or on your own Twitch stream? Just let us know where can people continue to check out your stuff. It'll all be linked down below as well.
I'm going to go ahead and plug LoveThyNerd. I feel like I breezed over it because we've been talking about LoveThyNerd like everyone knows what it is already. But for those of you who are still listening and don't know what LoveThyNerd is an organization that exists to share the love of Jesus with nerds and nerd culture. You've heard a lot about what we do. We stream on Twitch. We have podcasts, articles, all sorts of stuff. So I encourage you, go to LoveThyNerd.com and just explore. Like I said, we have articles. Nate has written an awesome article that's on there, and maybe we'll be writing more stuff in the future. You never know. But we also have podcasts. I think I mentioned them. Replay podcast, which is just a bunch of nerdy talk, and then our Church Nerds podcast is one of my favorite podcasts. It's Bubba and his wife Anna just talking about, like we were talking about, of like things in recent pop culture and how we can relate that, like view it with a Christian perspective. And super good podcast. We have D&D content, you name it. We got all sorts of stuff. So check out lovethynerd.com. If you want to find me on there specifically, lovethynerd.com/Luke or /Frost. Both work, because again, I don't care what people call me anymore. But check that out. You can read more about what I do. You can find more about me. There's ways you can support me, whether that's through prayer or financially, or like sending me something to improve like our stream to reach more people. But you can also find me at FrostByteIV.com, Frostbite4. And there I try to keep people updated with a blog of like what I'm doing. It is very outdated. I think me writing is above me reading. I would rather read stuff than write stuff. But if you want to see what I've been up to, check that out. All my socials are there too if you go to frostbite4.com/socials. But we talked about, I'm on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, Discord, you name it. All those links are there. So we also have, like I said earlier, LTN Con coming up. If you are free and in the area of Louisville/New Albany, Indiana, October 14, 15, and 16, we're all gathering together to be nerds. And we have all sorts of events. Nate is doing an anime Jeopardy, and some things like that, as well as you just get to hang out with him and the rest of us at LTN and play games and learn stuff. So it's going to be super cool. Definitely come out. Would love to have you show up at that. But
I have a feeling this will come out after LTN Con, but I'm going to leave that in just to hype it up. Okay. And then I'll say, what's the plan for next year? Have you talked about that? Is there going to be another? Is it going to be online?
So the idea is we haven't been able to do this since 2019. So 2019, we did an in-person one. It was awesome. Everyone loved it. And then COVID hit. And so we moved it to online. So we did it in person and then 2 online. We're coming back in person. As of right now, it's kind of up in the air. We want to learn from what we did well, what we didn't do well with the in-person LoveThyNerd LTN Con. But we would love to bring it back every year in person. And whether that looks like us doing it every fall, and then in the spring, we do like an online one, or we alternate like years. Are we going to move it around? I would love to do it in like different pockets of our community. So I'd love to do one on the East Coast. I would love to do one in Texas. I would love to do one on the West Coast, or like wherever we have these pockets of our people. I would love to take it international, like we were saying, in the next 5 years. We have a lot of members in Canada. So yeah, it's kind of up in the air. So like, just keep an eye out on that. If we come to your area, we'd love to see you and have you be a part of that. If you're like a creator or like a local, like we have booths that are going to be set up from like local creators. If you're one of those that you want to set up a booth like at one of our future shows, we'd love to work with you there and help promote that. But I think, yeah, the possibilities are endless. So we'll learn. We'll invite you next year, whatever that may be.
There we go. Yeah. So that we'll take away from the shout out will be email your LTN representative and tell them how much you loved LTNCon if you went. And if you weren't able to go, then tell them where you are so they can make sure they make it there soon. And that'll be awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Luke. I so appreciate you being here and being on the podcast. I look forward
Thanks for having me,
to
man.
where LTN continues to go.
Yeah. Excited. We're excited. Thank you for having me.
All right, that is a wrap on the latest episode of Nerds of Prey. Folks, I really hope that you enjoyed this podcast. This show is distributed free of charge and worldwide, but we would love your support and help by giving us a 5-star review and sharing the episode around to your friends so that we can reach as many nerds, geeks, and gamers as possible. Be sure to go and follow our special guest Frost using all the links in the show notes down below. Give him some kind words of encouragement for the great stuff that LoveThyNerd and Luke are doing together. If you enjoyed this discussion and want to talk more, feel free to join the Checkpoint Church Discord, where we'll be talking about all the exciting things that Frost brought to the table. Not to mention, this episode did premiere on our Twitch channel, so be sure to follow twitch.tv/checkpointchurch to catch the next episode and discuss it live with the viewers. Our next episode will drop next month and will be a bit different as we hear a testimony from one of our members, Zando, in a bonus episode of the show as we plan for the 2023 season of Nerds of Prey. Look forward to that, and thanks again for giving us a listen. If you have recommendations or would like to be considered as a future guest on the podcast, submit your name and biography to checkpointchurch@gmail.com. Nerds of Prey is recorded, edited, produced, and distributed by Nathan Webb and Checkpoint Church. Checkpoint Church Podcast is the hub for all of our podcasts, sermons, and special projects. To learn more, go to checkpointchurch.com or send questions to checkpointchurch@gmail.com. Remember that we believe 3 things to be true about every single one of you listening, regardless of where you might be with God. We firmly believe that God loves you, we love you, and you matter. That's all for this one. I have been your nerd pastor, Nate, and this has been the Nerds of Prey. Special thanks to our guest, Luke, also known as FrostByte4. Until next time, bye-bye!